Okay, well, welcome. This is the east north of Kalispell and the front yard, which is open to the deer. So I do nothing here, except I did plant some sage, some Salvia officinalis. The deer will not touch that. And I had a fence put in to just enclose this, the south side of the house. So there's good sun, there's good warmth. There are two pear trees. And then around them, there are lots of perennials planted. Up against the south wall are several pots. This larger one is great for doing cherry tomatoes. And then the smaller pots, I found that peppers do really well in the small pots. This is the backyard. And it was, when I bought the house 7 years ago, all lawn. So every year I try to take out a little bit more lawn. And put in space for either annuals or perennial plants. So there are 3 apple trees, a peach, and a plum. And then these are 5 raised beds. And they're very practical for growing all the annual vegetables. So this is, maybe 4 by 8. You can do 4 by 8 and get a really good harvest of asparagus. And that's not a lot of space to devote if you really love asparagus, which I do. Let's see, along the fence here, some of this is open, which is really good. I've used that in the past for cucumbers or climbing plants. This is a big open area. There's no lawn. And generally what I'll do in here is zinnias and nasturtium, marigolds. They're just beautiful as an edge, bring in pollinators. And then in the center, I've done corn, or I've done tomatoes. I've done the winter squash. I've done little bush beans along the edge. So it changes every year. I do something a little different. This apple tree is surrounded by quite a bit, actually. There's 3 honeyberry plants. There's sage, there's hyssop, there's some St. John's wort, there's black currant. And then I have a compost pile full of snow at the moment. I don't try to, segregate and then do layers of green and brown. I just pile it on, and that seems to work. So this spring, by April, I should be able to take the material off the top that still is a little rough. Underneath there's going to be a lot of good compost and worms. This is like a dry, sunny spot that was a little hard. One of the things you have to consider in a garden is how are you going to water? How far does the hose stretch? So the hose I have is way over by the pots, and I'd have to bring it down this sidewalk. So I don't often water this. It's on its own. So it's been really good for the thyme that you can see peeking through the snow. You can harvest thyme all winter, all year, really. And then the sage. The sunflowers I planted once, and they have planted themselves ever since. So there are sunflowers all over the garden. These I've just kind of left. Even though I'm not really harvesting anything from them, it's just attracting all kinds of life, which is good. And this is good sun, so I've planted tomatoes, basil, peppers in here before. And then this summer, this area was new, so I just let it be. It was mostly basil, cilantro, there were some sunflowers, and there were a couple little squash in here. And that was a nice combination. They worked really well together. With that Haraldson apple tree, I think this is my favorite. You have to wait a little in the spring to harvest it, but it just has a really good flavor. And I still have a few in the refrigerator. And this area is a little hard to water, so I haven't figured. In the past I've grown cabbage in here. It gets pretty good sun, so I've even grown corn in there a few times, but my idea is to just let it become perennial plants. Look, this is a hazelnut, and I think they don't produce really heavily every year. You get these mast years. So the year before there are actually quite a few, and then this started out as a pretty small plant. and it's been in the ground maybe 4 years. So it has really grown pretty remarkably. Two elderberry plants. Started those with just little 1 gallon starts maybe 5 years ago, and they love it here. We got it from Growers Greenhouse. It was maybe about $100. It has a plastic cover, and so I use it to just harden plants off. I start them in the basement, and then after they're transplanted, I can bring them out here and grow them on until I'm ready to put them in the garden. Along the deck is a planter that's about 10 feet long and a foot wide. And initially I wanted to grow peas and lettuce because this is shaded in the afternoon, but it gets the good morning sun, and they did really well. But there had been mint in the area that I thought I had gotten all the rhizomes out, but after just 1 year, the mint's growing up through the planter. So now it's just a mint bed. And I like that. So I've got peppermint that I dry for tea. We have other pots that I'll bring out. This has good sun. So I've grown peppers, eggplant, basil, lemongrass in pots in this area. So there are these 4 raised beds. These are just cedar fence boards with some 4x4s, and you can see it's like lined with pond liner. That way I'm hoping the wood will last quite a long time. And then these are pretty high, so what I did is I put a bunch of clippings and wood, just debris from the garden, and then the potting soil on top. So I had peppers in this bed. This is a good space for maybe 3 peppers, and then I had a bunch of basil. The basil loved it in here. It was really protected. It's the best space to grow the basil, and the peppers did really well in here too. Then I had a couple cucumber plants and more basil. Then there was a little cherry tomato and more basil. And this little bed was an experiment. I had a little hibiscus in there, but we just don't have the heat. So this is just water. Water is kind of it's a way it'll absorb heat and kind of moderate the temperature in here a little. Get maybe 10 degrees difference at night between inside here and outside. And then yesterday I was in here and it was about 70 because the sun was out. It felt so good. So it isn't really practical to grow in the winter here. You take a break and then start over. This is my basement, and I have 2 grow lights. They're like a foot by about 4 foot. And I have these boot trays that are perfect for just holding the different seedling trays. You can water, and it's protecting the tabletop. I love these little plastic containers. I've gotten these you can get them at Hooper's, or you can get them at Plantland, and I just reuse them every year. I wash them out, rinse them, and then reuse them. But I love this for starting the smaller seeds. So this size is really good for doing lettuce or broccoli or cabbage or onions. You can do a whole bunch of little onion starts. And so this tray, you've got I guess 12, different possibilities of things, different varieties you could plant, and it's in a nice compact space. So this is more for you do an individual seed in each one of these, or maybe just a couple small seeds, but this dries out more quickly than these larger containers. So I think I really do prefer this. But once again, you have to be really careful with the watering. And I think watering is the most challenging thing with starting plants from seed. Not too much, not letting them dry out. And then the consistency when you're trying to water something like this, the edges usually dry out more quickly. And then you'll have a few cells that are just really wet. I've got this little bin to put soil in and to transplant and do the work. And I like this. These you can get at Home Depot, and they're really for mixing concrete, and they're not very expensive. but it's just a really nice way to contain the potting soil. I have seeds ready. I usually don't sow any seeds until the end of February or the first part of March. So these are all the cool season things. There's spinach, there's some onions, there, is lettuce. So I'm being really disciplined, not trying to start things too early. It makes a difference if you wait. And I think that's the big challenge with starting seeds inside is holding off and then giving them a situation where they get enough light so they don't stretch.